The geopolitical landscape surrounding the protracted conflict between Russia and Ukraine experienced a significant tremor today, May 20, 2025. Reports from Washington indicate a decisive shift in the United States' approach to peace negotiations. President Donald Trump has signaled a clear desire for the U.S. to disengage from direct involvement in brokering a peace deal. This marks a departure from previous American postures, which often saw the nation taking a leading role in mediating complex international disputes. The implications of such a move are potentially far-reaching, altering the dynamics of the ongoing conflict and the broader international efforts to find a lasting resolution. This new stance suggests that the primary responsibility for resolving the conflict should rest squarely on the shoulders of the two warring nations themselves. Trump's communication implies a belief that Russia and Ukraine are best positioned to understand the nuances of their own dispute. The international community is now watching closely to see how this recalibration will unfold and what it means for the future of the peace process. The coming weeks and months will be crucial in observing how both Russia and Ukraine adapt their strategies in light of this evolving American posture. This recent indication of American disengagement presents a fascinating contrast to earlier pronouncements made by Donald Trump regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Many will recall his confident assertions that, were he in a position of executive power, he would bring an end to the conflict virtually overnight. However, the current stance, which appears to distance the United States from the peace effort, represents a significant recalibration of that initial, highly ambitious timeline. Instead of direct, immediate intervention led by Washington, the new approach seems to favor a more hands-off strategy. The evolution from a promise of rapid, personal intervention to a policy of stepping back raises questions about the underlying strategic thinking. A key development in this evolving situation was a recent, lengthy telephone conversation between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Reports from Russian sources described the call, which lasted over 2 hours, as very friendly. Following this significant diplomatic exchange, Trump announced that ceasefire negotiations between Russia and Ukraine would commence immediately. This news suggested a positive breakthrough, a potential pathway to de-escalating the brutal conflict. Trump further elaborated that the conditions for peace would be negotiated between the two parties, as they know details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. This statement formally abdicates Washington's traditional role as a central peace broker. The implications of this direct communication and the subsequent framing of the peace process are substantial. The international community will be scrutinizing these developments closely, assessing whether this approach can genuinely lead to a cessation of hostilities and a lasting peace. This shift in the American stance is particularly noteworthy when contrasted with very recent history. It was only just over a week ago that Trump had aligned himself with other Western leaders, collectively vowing to impose new, stringent punitive measures on Russia if Moscow failed to implement an immediate ceasefire. However, the messaging following the call with President Putin indicates a significant departure from this pressure-centric approach. Trump reportedly informed European leaders that he did not intend to apply additional pressure on Moscow, at least while bilateral talks between Russia and Ukraine were ongoing. This decision to pause or withhold further sanctions represents a clear policy reversal, moving away from coercive diplomacy towards a more hands-off observation of direct negotiations. In a somewhat unexpected turn, as the United States signals a reduced role in direct mediation, Donald Trump has floated the idea of alternative entities stepping in to facilitate peace talks. Specifically, he mentioned the Vatican as a potential host and mediator. Trump stated, "The Vatican has stated that it would be very interested in hosting negotiations. The suggestion of the Vatican as a mediator is intriguing. The Holy See has a long history of quiet diplomacy and has often offered its services in conflict resolution, emphasizing humanitarian concerns and moral suasion. Its neutrality could be seen as an asset, potentially making it an acceptable intermediary for both Moscow and Kyiv. The success of Vatican-led mediation would heavily depend on the genuine willingness of both Russia and Ukraine to engage in good faith and make substantial concessions." The shift in Washington's approach has not gone unnoticed by its international partners, particularly those in Europe and, most critically, Ukraine. European leaders who have been deeply invested in supporting Ukraine and countering Russian aggression are reportedly making efforts to persuade Trump to maintain U.S. involvement in the peace process. Their concern likely stems from the understanding that American leadership and leverage have been crucial components of the Western response to the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who also communicated with Trump, voiced his anxieties quite directly. He warned, "It is crucial for all of us that the United States does not distance itself from the talks and the pursuit of peace, because the only one who benefits from that is Putin." Zelensky's statement highlights Ukraine's perspective that active American engagement is vital not only for achieving a just peace, but also for ensuring that Ukraine is not left in a vulnerable negotiating position. The apprehension among European allies is understandable. The conflict in Ukraine has profound implications for European security and stability. A united transatlantic front has been seen as essential in managing the crisis and deterring further escalation. The reactions from both European capitals and Kyiv signal a period of diplomatic readjustment and potential anxiety as they navigate this new American posture. Amidst these diplomatic shifts and expressions of concern, foreign policy experts are offering their analyses of the situation. Andrew Weiss, Vice President for Studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, provided a pragmatic assessment. He commented, "It was never realistic to think the U.S. could strike a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine." Weiss further elaborated on the current American strategy, stating, "The goal now seems to be to agree to disagree with Russia and allow the Europeans and Ukrainians to work something out." This interpretation implies a U.S. acknowledgement of its limitations in directly brokering peace, opting instead for a strategy that allows regional actors to take the lead. This expert view introduces a degree of realism into the discussion. The notion of agreeing to disagree with Russia suggests a long-term strategic competition rather than an imminent resolution of underlying tensions. Beyond the immediate geopolitical maneuvering related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, broader economic concerns loom large, particularly those connected to Donald Trump's handling of trade wars. Despite a recent climb down on certain tariffs with a critical 90-day deadline for talks set to expire in July, the specter of renewed trade disputes continues to cast a shadow over the U.S. economy and its global partners. This uncertainty can potentially unwind economic growth and even risk triggering stagflation. The impact of global trade tensions is not confined to the United States. EU Economics Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis recently noted that the ongoing global trade war has already had quite a sizable negative impact on the European Union's economic forecasts. These economic considerations are intrinsically linked to foreign policy. A nation grappling with internal economic pressures or strained trade relationships may find its capacity for international leadership and intervention constrained. Donald Trump's decision to advocate for a U.S. step back from direct mediation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, coupled with his unique approach to international diplomacy and trade, signals potentially significant shifts in American foreign policy. This move, if sustained, could redefine America's role on the global stage, moving away from that of an indispensable peace broker in certain conflicts towards a more selective engagement. Such a recalibration would have profound implications not only for the specific crisis in Ukraine, but also for the broader international order, and the expectations allies and adversaries alike have of Washington. The emphasis on bilateral solutions between warring parties while championing national agency also risks creating power vacuums or leaving less powerful nations vulnerable. In the case of Ukraine, the absence of robust U.S. involvement at the negotiating table is a source of considerable anxiety, as expressed by President Zelensky. It raises questions about the future of U.S. commitments to its allies and its willingness to invest diplomatic capital in resolving distant conflicts. This could encourage other powers to increase their influence. The long-term consequences of this approach for global stability, the strength of international alliances, and the resolution of complex conflicts like the one in Ukraine will continue to unfold, watched closely by a world accustomed to a different mode of American leadership.